All right, so we're going to be starting a new project in Scratch. Okay. So, what we're going to be making is just a little dodgeball game. Start things off, we've probably got to get our character moving, but I'll probably explain some things about Scratch if you don't know about it. Over here we have some information about our sprite that we have selected. The name of the sprite, its X and Y coordinates, its size, and the direction it's facing, whether it's shown or hidden. All code is localized to every individual sprite. Yeah. So within the game screen, every part of it can be represented by coordinates, X coordinates, which are left or right, and Y coordinates that are up and down. You can manipulate these coordinates to move your sprites around, although that's not really what we're going to be doing for this game, at least not quite yet. But like I said, first thing that we got to do is get our player moving. So we're going to grab this event flag. It's called an event listener. You can see the rounded top. You can't stack any other blocks on top of it. And what event listeners do is when the event that they listen for triggers, then it starts executing the block of code that they're attached to. So most games, they typically start off when the green flag is clicked, so this is probably the most common block that you're going to be using. What we want to do is we probably want to follow the mouse. So, oh yes, the different types of blocks. So, depending on what you want to do, what kind of code you want to execute, there are different groupings of blocks. Motion is anytime you want to move anything around, manipulate the X, Y coordinates, point in directions, things like that. Looks are, just what has to do with appearance. Sprites have these things called costumes that you can switch between, get some kind of animations going. You can also change size, color, show it, hide it, a bunch of different things like that. There's sound, which I don't really use too often, but you can play around with that, pretty straightforward. Events, you mostly have event listeners here. You also have broadcast messages, which are custom events. We'll work with that eventually. You have control, which is where you have conditional statements like if else. You have your loops. You have a wait block, which is very useful, and clones, which is also extremely useful. And we have sensing. You can sense if two sprites touch each other, if they collide, if it's touching a color, distance from things, if, something like you click, mouse down. Yeah, then we have operators. Anytime you do any kind of math or any logic like that, you're generally going to need some operators. You may have also noticed that some of the blocks have different shapes. Just depending, you can only use certain blocks in certain situations. Like you'll notice the input for the if or the condition, it's got that kind of particular shape. So like say if you want to compare, like if your variable is equal to something, then it'll execute the code within it. Then we have variables. We're going to use a lot of that. Variables are well, I'll explain it when we use it. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and get it so that our sprite follows the mouse pointer. So all code is read top down. So the very first thing that happens is when our green flag is clicked, then it's going to go to the mouse pointer. So let's test that out. Okay, so it went to our mouse pointer, great, but it only went once, right when the green flag was clicked, because it executed, it listened for the event, it executed our code. But the thing is, we want it to constantly follow our mouse pointer. So what we're going to do is we're going to throw it in a loop, because we want this to go the entire game. Now, we could try something like a repeat 10 loop, which repeated 10 times and then it stopped running. But since we want this to go for the entirety of the game, I'm going to say continually go to mouse pointer. So there we go. We got our player character moving. That, although it looks a little stale, I don't really like that. So let's also have it point. Oops, go there. Gonna have it point towards the mouse pointer. There we go. Awesome. Well, so all right, just like that, we've got our player character moving. Now we need something to dodge. You can add other sprites down here. You can upload custom ones. You can get a random one. You can create them. I'm just going to choose one. A lot of different ones to choose from, but since we're creating Dodgeball, I'm just going to grab a basic ball. Okay, awesome. Size of that. All right, so now we've got something we can play with, but as you can see, it doesn't really do anything yet, so we kind of have to tell it what to do. And you'll also notice that our code that we have for our player sprite is completely separate from the code that we have for our ball. So if we want to get this moving, we've got to get down an event listener. So that is going to be pretty standard for this. Let's, okay, there's going to be a whole lot of ways we can move our ball around. The easiest one is probably going to be this glide to random position, at least for starting out. So we want that to just continuously glide to random positions. Oh yes, so loops. Loops, they are a block of code that continually repeats whatever is inside it. Now, a forever loop is a loop that's going to go basically until it's told to stop by something. Or, you know, the game ends, the stop sign is clicked. But let's go ahead and test it out. Okay, awesome. We got some movement. Goes to a random position, but still nothing really happens. There's no collision detection, anything like that. We've just got some movement going. But that's great for now. So let's add some collision detection. So we want an if statement here. We want to check if these two sprites collide at all, then something happens. So let's go ahead and go to sensing, and then from here we want this touching. So instead of touching the mouse pointer, we want to check if we're touching the player. So something really easy to do over in control is we can just grab the stop all, which stops all scripts that are currently running, all blocks of code. Doesn't matter if it's just in this particular sprite, it stops it for all sprites. Now you also have this. This is like a break condition, something that stops all other scripts in the sprite. But for this, we're just going to use stop all. So, awesome. Oop, there we go. So there's one other problem with this, with us using all of this in one block of code. I said that the code reads from the top to the bottom, so it's continuously running inside this loop. It reads this glide 1 second to random position, and then it reads the if block. It doesn't do both at the same time, which is kind of a problem, because if it's actively moving, then it's not reading our if statement. It's not checking if they're touching. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to separate these two. Now, you can have multiple blocks of code running at the same time. We have two different event listeners running next to each other. So now, it doesn't matter if it's in the middle of executing the glide block, we can still check our if statement. Okay, so we've got some really basic functionality built out here now. And let's see. Let's add a score variable, just to keep track of our score. We want to make this available for all sprites. Okay. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're just going to constantly change our score variable by 1. Oop, there we go. So as the game goes longer, your score goes up. And then when you collide, then your score stops. Now, there's one problem with this. It didn't reset there. So we have to include some kind of code to get that to reset. So what we want to do is grab the set block and place it in between our forever loop and our event listener. And so when the game starts, it is reset to 0. Fantastic. Okay. You definitely don't want to put your set block inside the forever loop because it'll constantly reset your score to 0. Now it doesn't go up anymore. One of the little quirks of Scratch is anytime you grab a block, you also grab all the blocks underneath it. So sometimes you have to like pull things out to, grab a particular block. But yeah, you'll be able to figure that out. So awesome. Now we have a score function in our game. Just to spice things up a little bit, I'm gonna add a backdrop here. Very similar to the way that sprites work. You can just choose one of the generic ones. I think we want to use a backdrop that isn't too distracting, something that would detract from our game, but also add a little bit of flavor to it. Okay, so okay, so now we have some functionality. Let's go ahead and duplicate our ball sprite. So we're basically creating a copy of it, and the nice thing is it saves all the code that's inside it, so we don't have to do all of that over again. So now we have 3 balls that we're dodging, and every single one of them works in the exact same way. Perfect. But so now we have a functional game of dodgeball. Another thing we're going to do to mix it up a little bit is we're going to go into these duplicates and we're going to change the costume. Now this is something that you can do inside of your code, but I'm just going to manually change it, and then it'll forever stay like that until, somebody else changes it, or I write in some code to change it. Awesome. So we have a functional dodgeball game, but it's a little bit basic. So let's go ahead and keep on building it up. Let's keep on improving on this. Next, what we can do is we can create a high score variable. Now, you can name your variables most anything you want, although generally you should name them after what they're going to be doing, what type of values you're going to store in your variables. Oh, forgot to explain what variables are. Okay, so a variable is kind of like a box, like an empty box. You can put anything inside of it that you want, and it'll hold on to that. You can take something out of the box, put something else in there. You can add to the box. For this, we're only putting numbers inside of our variables, but you can use them to store words. I think that's pretty much all that we can work with our variables for this inside of Scratch. Yeah, I'll talk more about different data types later. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of conditionality, some comparisons. So we're going to grab an if statement. We are going to grab a greater than or less than. It honestly doesn't matter which one. You can use either side. And what we're going to do is we're going to be comparing the values stored inside the variables. So you notice there's these different types of blocks here. These ones are to change the values held in the variables, and these ones are to check what is stored inside the variable. So if I want to check what the value of high score is, 0 or 189, then I use these little bubbles, and you can use them anywhere. So what we're going to want to check for is if our score is higher than our high score. So if that's true, then we want to set high score equal to score. And then So I'm kind of lazy. I don't like doing things multiple times over and over again. I'd rather just, if I make a big change like this, I'd rather reduplicate these sprites here, so I don't have to put this together, multiple times. So let's test that out. So we have our score going up. Our high score is 0. All right. It's not perfect, but it works well enough. Okay, but here we go. It's working as intended. There is like a slight moment between when it reads this block to when it reads this block, which accounts for the discrepancy in the scores. Although it's not really that big of a deal. Your score goes up so quickly, yeah, it's fine. It is fine. So let's go ahead and what next? Okay. So we have score, we have high score. Let's add a little bit of randomness to our game. Let's say glide a random number of seconds. 3 maybe? I don't know. Oop. Yeah. Okay. So we have this neat little pick random. Great. Just picks a random number for you. You choose the range in between what it can be. Okay. And then, oh, yeah. Day 3. Okay. So we've got a little bit more randomness to our game. Although just 3 balls, it could probably get a little bit boring after a little while. So I think what I'd like to do is have the game get more difficult the longer that you go on, like the higher your score gets. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have more balls show up if you reach a certain score. So in order to do this, we're going to clone some of our sprites here. So let's say if our score is above a certain threshold, say 200. Oh yeah, and you can click blocks of code to execute just that block. Good for testing some things. But anyways, back to control, we are going to create a clone of myself. So let's go ahead and test this out real quick. All right, everything working as intended. Going a little slow, maybe 3 seconds was too many. But see, right here, we have a clone, but there's a few other problems. It's not executing the code that we have written now, and it just keeps on creating more clones every single time it runs through the loop. So there's a few things we have to do here, because the clone is created long after the green flag is clicked, which is what starts our loop. So when it starts as a clone, these blocks of code haven't started. So we need an entirely different event listener. We need to tell it, when I start as a clone, I want you to do something. So what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate our code, right-click it and duplicate it, and tell it that when it starts as a clone to also run these blocks of code. Now, you have to be particular about where you click when you're duplicating. If I click on the green flag when I duplicate, then I'm going to get everything beneath it. If I click on the forever loop, then I get everything inside it. So you don't have to duplicate one block at a time. So awesome. I don't think we need that in our clone. But we also need something to limit the number of clones that are created. So for something like this, it could be really useful to use a variable. So we're just going to keep track of how many balls there are in play. So what we're going to do for this is we are going to, yeah, we'll just go ahead and do it here. So we really only need to set our variable in one location because it's a global variable that all sprites have access to and can modify. If I put this block in the other sprites, then it would set ball count to 3 times, which, I mean, not really an issue, but it really only needs to happen once. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add another condition to our if statement. So if score is above 200 and our ball count, wait, I need to read the value of the variable. Ball count is equal to 4, or nope, 3. First one is 3. So if these two things are true, then it'll create a clone. But then we also have to change the value of our ball count variable. We have to increment that so it doesn't keep on creating them. So let's go ahead and test that out. Okay, 3 seconds is definitely too long. But anyways, it created a clone, and all the code inside of it works. Awesome. Exactly what we wanted it to do. So now we're just going to delete these again. I'm going to duplicate again. And like I said, we don't really need this, but I'm not going to remove it just yet because I may end up deleting these and reduplicating because I'm a little bit lazy with my writing. Okay, so what we need to do is change some numbers. Let's say ball count is equal to 4 because we'll have 4 at this point, and if the score is greater than 400. And change this. And 5. I think that's everything. Okay, so let's test it out. Anytime you make major changes to your code, you want to test it out and make sure it works as intended. All right, so we got one clone, and our ball count variable has been incremented. Oh, there we go. Oh, that happened a little too quickly. That's what else I forgot. It was the score. 200. 100. Okay. See, yeah. So just perfect example right there. I forgot to change a value of our variable, our score variable that we're checking. And testing it right there helped me catch that. Okay, so we have 4, hit the 400, now we have 5. Now we hit 600, and we have 6. Perfect. And it resets every single time we hit the green flag. And yeah, everything is working as intended. We have score, we have high score, we have an increasing difficulty, and yeah, we've got some nice functionality for this. So I'm just gonna go ahead and change these. Oops. But you know what? We have all right, we have an awesome game here, but we can go a little bit further with it. We can make it a little bit more in depth. So what we're going to do now is we're going to make a custom block. This is a block of code that if you're going to be using a set of code more than one time inside of a sprite, it might be a good idea to create a custom block so that you can use it in multiple places. So what we're going to do is we're just going to call this X or Y start. Not really good naming convention, but it just looks better like that. So what we're going to do, so this is, you have to define it, but then you also have to use it somewhere in your code. So right now we're just going to define it. So what we're going to do is we are going to have our balls, instead of going to random positions and bouncing all over the place, we're going to set it up so it starts from the edge and goes to the edge, and it just keeps doing that, randomly. I think it would look a little bit nicer than the way they're just kind of floating around. So let's go ahead and do it. Let's go ahead and say, use a variable for this. Or y. Okay. Could have made this a local variable, but I don't see the need. So what we're going to do is we are going to set our variable x or y. We're basically going to use this to flip or roll the dice, I guess. Flip a coin, however you want to think of it. We're going to pick random 1 to 4. All right. And then we're going to use that if... let's use an if-else. So actually, let's just use 4 if statements. All right, we can use 4. Oops. And yeah, I like to be lazy. I don't like to write things out more than once if I don't have to. Oh, yeah, I might even do it again. Okay. Let's say we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. So like I was saying earlier, the entire screen can be, every spot on the screen can be represented by x and y coordinates. The limits of the x values is -240 all the way to 240. And then the range of the y values goes -180 up to 180. So we're going to use those x coordinates to just kind of to determine like when it's at the edge, where it starts at the edge, where it goes to the edge. So what we're going to do is we're going to say if it rolls a 1, it's going to start at this edge. So we want to say go to -240. But then we want it to go to a random y value that is within the range. So we're going to say pick random -180 all the way to 180. Right. And we're going to do that again. So we'll say, so I said 1, 2, okay. So this one's going to be 180. Oops, that's supposed to be negative. This one's going to be 240. 40. And this one is going to 3. That's going to be positive 240. And lazy. One's going to be negative. Yeah. So we have 50 to 40, 180, 40, negative. Perfect. So that accounts for all 4 sides. Now our balls are going to randomly show up. And this is probably something we should test out. So let's go ahead and... that's fine. This is fine. Okay. So, since we only, you know what? I'm not going to delete these and then move it over. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag this whole block of code and share it to my other sprites like this. So now these other sprites also have access to this block of code. So I'm gonna, yeah, we'll set that there. Okay. About that. Okay. So every time that it runs through this set of code and it hits this block, it's going to execute all these blocks of code and then continue down from there. So instead of writing this out in multiple places, I really only have to write it once and then put in this little block wherever I want to call this entire chain of code. So it just kind of keeps our code a little bit cleaner and prevents us from having to rewrite this over and over again. Okay. So yeah, so let's test it. Oop. Okay. So it kind of works. The only issue is they're kind of teleporting because they only go to random positions on the screen. We want it to go from the edge to the edge. So we're going to just keep on going with this. Let's do this. Instead of using this glide to random position, let's glide to coordinates. And we'll use this. Let's see. So if this is starting -240, and we want to have it go. So this will, having it glide to the opposite side of the screen will get it to, you know, make sure it goes from edge to edge. It doesn't like randomly teleport or anything like that. So we have 240 to -240 to 240, but we also want random y coordinates. So let's test that out now that we have one. Oops. The problem with random teleporting. Okay. Oh, and it's of course I did it. Wait. Oh, I still have this random position going. Okay. Don't need that. Okay, so it looks like we have. It works when it shoots out from the left side. All right, so we have working code here. So what we need to do is just kind of duplicate that one again. I'm just gonna go here because all I have to do is add a negative, and then up that. Execute here. Remember, it's going to the opposite side of the screen. So positive to negative, negative to positive. Stop that. Stop. Okay. Positive. All right. So let's test this out. All right. Oh, forgot. You know what? I'm doing it. I don't want to do all that. Okay. Okay. Like our costumes. Boop. Okay. All right. Okay, it's a little difficult. Okay. All right. Okay. 1 second might be a little too fast. But yeah, we have good. I probably want that 3. Well, let's do this. Do like 2 to 4. What else I'm doing? Okay. might be a little too slow. I don't know. All right. But I think that looks a lot better. Yeah, it's probably a little bit slow, but oops, it does get harder as it goes. Why was my ball count at 4? Oh, my duplication. Okay, I have to change these numbers again. 400. 4. And this is where testing becomes really important. It's super easy to overlook some things like that. Yeah, I noticed that I had a score of over 700, but I still only had 4 balls in play. Okay, maybe the speed is plenty fine with balls in play. Oh, okay. Okay. So awesome. We have a well built out game of dodgeball. Yeah, it didn't really take too much. So make sure to save your project. If you want, this is something that you can share with people. Let let other people play your game. You can go to the create page, see what some of the other games that people are creating. But yeah, that is all for this project. Let me know if you have any ideas or anything like that.